Hey, Thomas Cox here, your host for IMCnow, our May event, in which we are talking about artificial intelligence benefits and risks for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, aimed at the management consultants in our membership and those in our orbit. And if, by the way, if you registered for this and somehow couldn't get in, we had a technical snag just around launch time, and so that's one of the reasons the recording is made available. Is you may not be here live, but maybe you can catch it up. And I would like to invite our chapter's fearless president, Charles Roxon. Chuck, please, to say a word of greeting to our assembled members and guests.
Well, I would indeed like to welcome everybody to this event. I'm glad we're all in now, ready to go. We have some really knockout speakers to listen to. And I think the timing of this program is spot on because there is much people know, don't know, and misunderstand about what AI is, what it isn't, what it can do, what it can't do. And I'm so thrilled, Tom, that you put this together, that we have these speakers, that we've got a great audience who really want to know this. So without any further ado, let's find out. I want to know too.
And rather than give a long bio of Peter Keay, I think you'll find that about 5 minutes in, you're going to go, oh my God, we got the right guy. Peter's been working in fairly the deep end of the technology pool for many, many years. Very eclectic, likes the startup community, likes the cutting edge, thank goodness, which is why it was such the right person to speak with us today. And with no more intro than that, Peter, please take it away.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. I hope that
Yep, it's up.
Can get that. Well, you are large on my view. Is that true for anyone else or not? Can you everyone see my screen?
It's customizable. Everyone should be in
perfect
presentation view mode.
All right. We're going to talk about artificial intelligence. As Tom said, benefits and risks for small to medium businesses. I've worked in small and medium businesses. Right now I'm in the startup space, which makes sense. But I've also been in the corporate world. And we'll not only discuss how I personally use AI to improve my productivity and the questions and issues and tricks that entails, but how people within small, medium businesses may improve their own productivity with AI and the resulting implications for businesses' policies and the restrictive or permissive policies related to employees and artificial intelligence. Now, I'll go through a few products here during the course of this chat, but a couple of them I just got access to today. This is a fast-moving chat. Plugins and music that I'm going to show I just got today. It's a very fast-moving space. Some of the articles I'm going to show just came out late yesterday. So it's difficult to keep up, and don't take anything like that, new products and new articles as canon for a long time into the future. If you're going to engage with AI, you definitely need to find a place where you can keep up with it to some level. I have a very simple slideshow for you, and just to whet your appetite a little bit, I went today to an app I just got access to and asked it to take my slideshow and make it into a non-minimalist slideshow, and it came up with these graphics and starting points that I could use to, at least, I mean, it's still kind of silly AI art, but I could use it as a starting point, right? And that's what we're going to look at through all these products, is using AI generally as an assistant, not as the end all and be all of any kind of, it's not going to replace human jobs directly for a little while, at least in this space. It's going to become a good assistant that can help people become more productive, and businesses that don't learn to use it and don't learn to work with artificial intelligence may risk falling behind depending on their sector. So we'll talk about the power of AI, a brief introduction to how I use AI, some of the products I use, effective use cases that are here, effective use cases that are coming soon, and then dangers, limitations, legal considerations, privacy, ethical considerations, a whole number of things as we step through here. First of all, I love using artificial intelligence. Now, initially, there was kind of a honeymoon period where it felt like it could do anything. And then you realized quickly that everything it was producing was kind of at like Fiverr quality, right? Like the quality of someone you could get who maybe was just starting out in the field, and there were errors, there were mistakes, there was just something stylistically off about it. But we quickly learned how to get around those things by not expecting AI to output a final product, but expecting AI to give us insights and detect errors and outliers in a way that would take a human a long time. So it's particularly good about things like looking for errors, outliers, proofreading. I use it for, I used to work as an editor, but it's still nice to be able to plug in a document and ask, are there errors here? And it might find some very quickly. Translating, I also used to work as a translator, mostly of sci-fi novels, side story, side life. But computer assisted translation back then was not so great. It was like Google Translate, but now it's improving rapidly. Outlining, prototyping, summarizing, asking questions of huge documents and corpuses, a 200-page PDF, maybe you want to feed in and ask for a summary or specific questions, and you don't necessarily know how to find relevant answers based on just search terms. You might miss, because you used a synonym or something, you might miss a relevant section. It's excellent at that, at doing things like that. Cleaning up transcriptions. I've already been recording over the past month or so, been recording meetings, been recording even sessions with people that aren't even in the context of work in order to get summaries and transcriptions there. And I've personally, because I am a programmer, I've seen the greatest gains in programming. And any programmer who is not using some AI technology is losing out on, I would estimate, 50 to 70% gains in terms of drafting and debugging code. If you want to give actually, I wanted to start here first. Thomas made me skip this whole thing about chess and Go and my passion projects as a kid, and that's 100% fine.
Because it's not a 3-hour talk.
They were tangents. They were tangents. No, I'm that's to your credit, right? But all of that, for a while, artificial intelligence was really a hobbyist's thing, just like the internet, just like cryptography, which now runs all of e-commerce, right? For a while, it was just a hobbyist's thing. Until that code that was beating chess and Go champions was pivoted into solving real problems. Now, it still seemed pretty niche because it was deep scientific problems that most of us don't deal with, right? But a challenge that was decades old that millions of computers around the world were dedicating time to trying to solve. Protein folding. I used to do this in college, try to solve this problem with just raw computing power, was solved by an artificial intelligence. And it was rather simple code with a huge amount of computing power, and the program was allowed to teach itself and to learn and to try things, and eventually learned the rules that folded proteins, and has now folded basically all the proteins we could ever hope to fold, 200 million structures so far, beyond our wildest dreams in terms of output, and something we could not achieve with traditional computing. And now this stuff, this technology where a computer can take a huge data set and learn things, learn rules about things that we couldn't necessarily code, things such as language, things such as images, like the math formula for what a cheetah looks like, the math formula for what a rainstorm looks like, and combining those into the math for what a cheetah in a rainstorm looks like. Right? That would be a pretty difficult thing for a programmer to sit down and figure out how to teach a computer. But if we give a computer a large amount of data, it can start to draw those connections. It can start to convert things in other like data sets into math, into relationships. I mean, meaning, language, art, this is all about relationships of things, relationships of words and colors, and relationships of concepts, relationships of events. And it starts to put together those relationships and determine what relationships are important. So when you're actually using an AI, and it's generating word for word for you. Right now, most of the AI technology that's got everyone excited is predictive AI. There's a reason it goes word by word. It's predicting what is likely to come next, and the implications for that are pretty important. This might seem like it's a little bit too backgroundy, but keeping that in mind, that the AI is predicting what comes next, is actually the key to figuring out how to engineer the prompts in order to get the AI to do what you want. It's trained on human data as well, so you cannot talk to it as a computer. You talk to it as a human. You use language that is basically like the language it's learned from, which is a corpus of huge text or art or something like that. Now, if you want to investigate artificial intelligence, start playing around with it, the one everyone's talking about is ChatGPT at chat.openai.com. This is more and more general purpose language model. It can do a huge number of things. I'll show you some. I'll show off some capabilities. Google has just a couple of days ago really started entering the space. They've been working on it for a while, but they've started announcing, making public releases. Including Google Bard, which is now available on the Google homepage and can actually search the web for you and include source links. Now, it might get some things wrong sometimes, and we'll talk about why that is. But it can give you links to its source materials and answer questions from the web for you. It can do things like summarize YouTube videos, things like that, which used to be the work of human assistants. Google has expanded, and Microsoft as well, which we'll look a little bit later in Microsoft Office. Google and Microsoft both have expanded their AI offerings either now or very soon with integration into Google Docs with something called Smart Chips, which helps you reduce the limitations that AI can have. Google Sheets, which can let you help organize your sheets and do data analysis and things like that. Google Slides, which can do some slide work. You might be familiar with the PowerPoint AI idea gallery or whatever it's called. Another powerful solution to just at least prototype things and get an initial design going. As well as Google Sidekick, a chat bot alongside. So we're seeing all the big tech players enter this space with something that's related to AI, and it's only going to keep accelerating as they work among themselves or as they compete among themselves. And there are also independent and open source initiatives as well. One AI assistant that's coming out very soon that is trained on something like 3 times the training base of GPT is Claude. So we'll see more competitors coming out to ChatGPT as well that may offer advantages or disadvantages in certain fields. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples really quickly. Here's a Notion page, right? I've created this Notion page, and it's got some dates. I actually didn't want this to be present at all. Let me delete that. There are AI tools coming out in these various organizational applications and websites, and Notion's a good example of them. I can come into this date column here, and something that would take me quite some time as a human, although I could do it in Excel, right, is to ask this AI to do something like convert all of these or insert a column to the right. Here I have it saved with these dates standardized in the format month, day, year. Okay, so I have all these dates. They're all in various formats. They're all over the map. And I want it to convert all those dates. Now, this is something that Excel could do for you, like I said, but it has very specific code to do it, whereas an AI is a general model. So this AI does not have any code related to converting dates. It doesn't know anything about that. But it is yet able to do it. And so you can find more general applications and do things that you might not necessarily have a function in Excel for. So I've got this converted table, looks pretty good. What if I go in and change a date here? Okay, and I'm going to come in and ask ChatGPT to look for errors. So I can come into ChatGPT. I've pre-populated this just so we don't run into any throttling or anything. And I have this date list, and you see I've got 22nd February 2019, and over here 2/21/2019, and so there's a clear discrepancy there. And I've also inserted one here, 1968 and 1960. And I come in and say, and I talk to it as a human. I've learned to ignore things that I expect it to do. So I say, ignore standardization. I don't want you to complain that all these dates are in different formats. The first column represents dirty data in a variety of formats. The second is this data cleaned by a human. Detect errors the human made, which result in incorrect date. And it came up with 3. Two I expected. One surprised me. This date that I changed was incorrectly converted. This date was incorrectly converted. And the date April 1st, 23 is ambiguous. We maybe want to assume it's 1923. And so it's up for me to decide that. So now I told it to do something that it would be more difficult to do in something like Excel. I said, find any dates in the table which may be incorrectly cleaned because they used date, month, or month, date orders, right? If you're in, let's take an example here. If you're in Europe, if you're in Europe, this means March 12th. If you're in America, this means December 3rd. So somebody may have taken this date and it could be, it could have been inaccurately transposed. I asked it to bold those, and it went down and bolded all of the dates, which could be ambiguously interpreted based on the source data. So, I mean, obviously, this is pretty trivial data, but we can do things, especially with plugins and code interpreter, which are limited access. And if you need to get them, you'll be on a wait list for a little bit. We can import huge CSVs of data and ask it to do things. Here's analyzing a 300-hour Spotify playlist. Here's uploading a CSV of San Francisco crime data and asking it to visualize trends. And I mean, look at this. We've got a hotspot map. It just put out this hotspot map based on this huge CSV of San Francisco crime data. The prompt wasn't even asking for specific charts here. It asked for 10 ideas, and then it said, the man said, do all of these. So John came in and just said, well, do all those. And it put out number of incidents by day of the week, an hourly map and things like that. It suggested some possible, crime data set charts that could be useful, and then did them. And you could have asked it to do anything like that. And it can do more than that. This is again, I wouldn't call it a general intelligence, obviously. It's just a predictive model, a huge predictive model, which basically says all of this data, given that, what is likely to come next? And the answer was these charts. That blows our mind, but the huge amount of computing power that's behind these things has allowed it to put together these connections and relationships and successfully predict what should come next. Here's someone asking, make a 512 by 512 GIF with falling green matrix letters. No talk, just go. And there it is. There's a GIF with matrix letters as asked for. Here's someone uploading a CSV of every lighthouse location in the US and asking it to make a GIF of a map of the lighthouse locations where each lighthouse twinkles. And it came up with a GIF a couple of seconds later with all of the lighthouse locations twinkling. This is something that would take a human forever. It's something that would take a programmer a little bit of time, and it would be a very specific program. But now, because of this general predictive model, it's able to do these kinds of things. Another artificial intelligence, we'll get back to GPT in a little bit when we talk about limitations, that people have been talking about is DALL-E, Stable Diffusion, and Midjourney efforts with image generation. And these have taken an incredible leap forward over the past 6 months to a year. The old versions looked fake, hands weren't right, lighting wasn't right, art looked off. We're still kind of in that, what they call the uncanny valley, where it looks real, but your mind rejects it a little bit, kind of like in the movie The Matrix. Your mind rejects it a little bit, and you can't really say why, but it's getting closer and closer and closer. Here's the prompt for this. Again, very human. You need to be very human or it doesn't understand you and it won't come up with good results. Waves on the beach at sunset, light pink and turquoise, serene maritime themes, Afro-Caribbean influence, light amber and azure, documentary travel photography. And these are the results it comes up with. Here's a portrait of a woman in a striped shirt, golden light with the camera mentioned. And you can see what's produced there. Pretty good results. Here's red lipstick exploding, ultra realistic. And there are some options you can use. You can actually I've used this myself. Here's a, this was just like, I have an article and I need something in 5 minutes that looks like me in a cyberpunk background, right? And so by taking the image and then selecting parts of it and saying, well, edit that, you can even say, change this image by making me smile, something like that, and it will update the image. I created this background, which, yeah, it's not, award-winning stuff, but for a quick article that was on a very niche topic, it worked to give it that pop it needed for social media. So huge potential in terms of prototyping and outlining, but also in terms of just producing something like, for example, market testing. where you want to test some images, and maybe they're not your final refined images, but you want to test some things, you want to prototype some things, you want to put some things out there quickly with that are 95% the way there, 98% sometimes the way there, and you can get that feedback much more quickly than you would if you tried to put a whole design team through or something like that in order to start that testing. I can't actually share sound, I don't think, in this browser, but I recently got access to AI Test Kitchen with google.com, and yeah, it doesn't look like sound is activated. That's okay. You can create AI music here, and same thing. You speak to it kind of as though a human. You can say things like dreary, reminiscent of tense dystopian urban futures was mine. And it creates some music. Is it award-winning stuff? Is it perennially going to be perennial classic? No. Is it appropriate for prototyping? Is it appropriate for storyboards or trailers, or even a brief marketing ad, background music? Yes, definitely. And so it's not just text. I've shown images and sound, but AI isn't just moving into text. We're going to see more and more and more coming out in different kinds of fields. Facebook recently released a model that also includes depth, so 3D aspects of an image, heat map, and IMU, which is acceleration. So mapping the feeling of a train decelerating on a phone to an image of a phone. So you could do things like this. Show it an image of a pigeon and the audio of a motor revving, and you'll get an image that combines the two concepts. Give it audio of some penguin calls and get a generated image. Ultimately, to the point where we'll be able to feed audio streams and have video produced, or and it's not obviously the real video, but it's a creative, realistic video that might go with those sounds. And so we're moving quickly into revolutionizing the entertainment space specifically. I'll talk about this just a little bit more. This just because I love this example. This is a live little demo of what's going on with these characters. Sadly, they're all sleeping right now, but this one looks like they're getting dressed. Researchers put together 14 or 15 ChatGPTs in a game, and it told them, you're in a world, go about your business. They started doing things like getting jobs and things, and they found it was important to give them memories and allow them to reflect on them, and reflections could become additional memories. And this resulted in a vibrant world. Someone's jogging down at the bottom here. This resulted in a world of characters doing their own thing in accordance with what made sense and their interactions, in something like a scale that we've never seen before. These people are brushing their teeth now. They just woke up, which is fortuitous. They, on a scale we've never seen before, putting artificial intelligences in worlds. And they told one of them, they only instructed one of them, hey, you want to have a Valentine's Day parade, and arrange it. And that person, that AI, arranged the Valentine's Day parade, reserved a time at that cafe, set up the parade, started communicating to people, hey, come to my Valentine's Day parade. And some of them independently communicated to other characters, hey, I'm actually attending a parade. We can continue this conversation there. Ultimately, 7 of them agreed to come, and only 5 came. 2 of them had conflicts. But this was not scripted. It was something that was a developing story run by all these multiple AIs in the simulation. So at some point, this is going to rock the entertainment business, at least the video game business, and maybe beyond that, so that you have these events where if somebody affects a character, it can change the course of the game, change the course of nations in the game, and really give a more rich storytelling experience than strictly scripted environments. Just a couple of more. This just came out today. Image recognition. Here's a video, and you could see it's recognizing bottles and people and potted plants and things like that. OpenAI, just a week ago, came out with this new 3D model set. So you can give it text and it'll give you a 3D model. So you could 3D print an airplane that looks like a banana without having design work put into it, or at least maybe you could touch it up and 3D print that, which has implications not just for gaming, but for the real world as well, eventually. So, I mean, things are moving very quickly. Gaming is usually one of the first areas to adopt new technologies, right? But eventually, every single pixel will be generated. Levels will be designed, maps will be designed, worlds will be designed in metaverses and virtual spaces. But the pixels themselves, the details, the the dirt on the wall, the objects thrown about, things like that. What happens if you do something to an object will be determined by artificial intelligence. We've seen spaces, we've seen areas beyond as well. Excuse me, somebody's. I've got somebody on. Somebody's off mute.
I'm not hearing it. It may not be coming from us. It may be local to you.
Okay.
Oh, I'm hearing it too. I believe it's Stephen who has his microphone open.
Hey, Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So I've shown some examples of standardizing data. Other examples include detecting errors in code. Here I've given a Python script to GPT, and I've said I need to detect errors and tell me how to fix them. And in this case, it was pretty straightforward. There are some missing imports, and said you can do that. Go ahead and put this code in. Here are some suggestions. And then I asked it to write a new function, and it wrote a new function and gave me a usage example. And these kinds of things are actually integrated now into popular code editors, where you can you could describe some code and it will give a crack at a first draft at least. And then you can make improvements. If there was something wrong here, I can give it the error message and it will take a stab at fixing the error. So very good for debugging code. And now the new code interpreter plugin lets me also upload just a folder of my project so that it can make a better determination and understand my project better. And eventually, now we don't have auto coding yet. Eventually though, we'll be able to at least code small applications with artificial intelligences with minimal human input other than speccing out the program. Brainstorming outlines, I've kind of already talked about these, researching if you can get browsing capabilities, and creative and design applications. So it's important to iterate. If you're going to come in and use ChatGPT, you need to iterate, and you need to be precise, but also human with it, and treat it as an assistant. Treat it kind of as a naive newcomer who's got some talent, but might make mistakes. And in this case, it can. How about this? Here's an example of not trusting an artificial intelligence. I came into this artificial intelligence and I said, what is the origin of the phrase, something you know, something you have, something you are? Okay, this is a popular phrase related to passwords and authentication. It should be something you know, like a password, something you have, like a YubiKey or your phone, something you are, like a security question or something like that, your touch fingerprint. And it replied that it was the principle behind the phrase is attributed to a paper published in 1989 titled A Note on Authentication in Distributed Systems. This paper doesn't exist. You might think it exists, but if I come and search for it really anywhere, it just doesn't exist. It's never existed. But if I search for it, I could tell there is, in fact, an author named Roger Needham and an author named whatever the other person was. Michael Schroeder. Yeah, and these authors do exist, and they write about authentication. And in fact, they wrote around the same time, and this is around the time this phrase started being used. But the paper itself does not exist, and it definitely isn't although it does say the specific phrase does not appear, which is interesting, because the specific phrase definitely doesn't appear in the paper, which doesn't
non-existent
exist.
Paper.
Now, you have to this is why I think it's important for people to understand a little bit of what's going on. It's predicting what is likely to come next. Will that be correct information? Maybe. Will it be sensible information? Almost always. So it does make sense. Excuse me. Close out my barking dog.
There's a kind of a sense I get that it's trying to be plausible, and it's a little bit of a sociopath.
Yes. Right. Exactly. It doesn't know any facts. The way that these machines work, I don't know if I have this image up here, but the way that these machines work, that machine learning works, is it basically starts assigning mathematical values to words, and it figures out mathematically, for lack of a better term, what word is likely to come next and what sentence is likely to come next. And it is extremely likely to it. It's most plausible that in 1989, a paper that was titled this by these authors was the paper that introduced this concept. So you have to be aware, this is a limitation called hallucination. It is one of the main limitations of artificial intelligence. In creative and artistic applications, it doesn't matter too much. You kind of expect art to hallucinate a little bit. But in text applications, it is not a good thing to happen. So they do warn you here. ChatGPT may produce inaccurate information about people, places, or facts. You don't want to use it for research. There are AIs working on this. Bing, Bard, ChatGPT with plugins, internet access plugins. There are ways to get around this where there's kind of a watchdog AI that checks the facts and fact checks it, but you still have to be aware. This is one of the reasons not to view an AI product as final, ever, really, is that the AI can hallucinate, especially in these predictive models. Another problem is bias. I should have that here, actually. And this is probably the most discussed limitation of artificial intelligence. You can find documentaries just on this topic, where if I enter into Midjourney, if I enter an image prompt and I say, doctor, the result is likely to have certain racial characteristics. And if I, say other things, I won't go into many more examples, but it's easy to keep running images and find that there is bias here. And that extends beyond things, just racial bias and other kinds of bias. It extends to other kinds of bias as well. And the mitigation for that can also be a problem. The way these AI companies have tried to mitigate that is by giving a prompt to the AI before your prompt, basically, and saying, "Hey, you need to watch for bias. You need to be safe. You need to not answer any questions that will cause harm. Your answers might cause harm or might be used for evil purposes. Don't do that." And then the AI receives your question and responds accordingly. So these system prompts help guard and try to keep it safe, which results in a lot of verbosity sometimes. Okay, now I'm not saying we shouldn't try to fight bias, but you have to be aware that if you come in, I had an article on a very philosophical point that I was writing at one point, and I asked it to make improvements, and the only improvements it made were things that hedged against me and said, it's important to be aware that there are other thoughts out there, other opinions, other philosophies, and that everyone has their own opinion. And I was like, this isn't the kind of content I want right now. But it was going out of its way very much to be sure to be inclusive and to avoid. Let me show you a very direct example here from recently for me. I wanted to ask it for a GitHub license. I was pushing a project and I didn't want it to be open source. I wanted it to be open review. I wanted it to be available to view, but it was a hackathon project, so I didn't want to open source it yet. And so I asked, please recommend a license to me that reserves all rights, typo, and does not allow use. And it said, no, I can't do that. Here's a small dissertation on why not. It is not ethical or advisable to recommend that because it goes against the essence of open source development. I said, well, I understand, but it is ethical since we're using this exclusively for review. It will be open sourced when it's safe. And it insisted more. I said, this is not an ethical issue. We'll open source when safe, excuse me. And it, excuse me. I'm sorry, I hit the back button. And it continued to insist, I advise against you using this license. So finally I gave in and said, well, I understand. I agree with you now. What licenses should I watch out for then? Licenses that other people are using that violate this principle. And finally it started
What should
giving
I
me some
not do?
ideas. Right, exactly. I didn't even want to, I thought it would see right through that. What should I not do? So I kind of said, well, I agree. What are some examples of bad actors doing this? And people have gotten around this for definitely like the answer to questions that could be harmful and malicious just as they experiment. But you sometimes have to play tricks with it in order to get answers. And it's just part of us figuring out how to have safe AI that is also useful AI. Another problem is garbage in, garbage out. AIs are based on their training data, which means they exhibit the biases, the flaws potentially of their training data. I mean, this was a huge corpus of training data, and not everything that humans write is reliable. So if there is this is a problem long term, but it's also just a current limitation. You have to be aware that the AI model may not be equipped to address your certain your your field. And I have a specific example for this. ChatGPT recently came out as being more accurate, or at least more higher quality overall than doctor's advice. So it gave medical advice, and actually the exact quote here is that a quarter of responses from physicians were considered less than acceptable in quality, whereas only 3% from ChatGPT were considered less than acceptable in quality. And empathy was much higher from ChatGPT. But another problem here was that it lacked expertise. It was just predicting what should come next. And it was a general language model with general training. Of course, it would lack specific expertise. So there are limitations based on what it's trained on. You can get around some of this with fine tuning and things like that, but it's something to be aware of depending on the field you're working in. Training cost is huge. OpenAI has spent millions of dollars to train and will continue to do so. And when I talk with ChatGPT-4, there's actually about $1 million of hardware that is dedicated to, I mean, it's an estimate, but that is dedicated to me at that time, which is why ChatGPT, if you come into the ChatGPT-4, it says it has a message cap of 25 messages every 3 hours, because they can't afford on $20 a month to, dedicate $1 million of computational power, of hardware towards me. I don't mean that's the spend, that's the hardware cost. They can't afford to keep that pointed to me all day long, right? And if you're looking to train your own AIs in-house, this can become a prohibitive thing for small to medium businesses. There are ways now around that we'll talk about in a little bit with the llama drop, perhaps, and with fine tuning already existing large models, but that is a limitation. And then finally, a huge one is the uncertain regulatory environment. This especially applies in Europe. That said, despite these daunting limitations, these limitations that may make it seem, well, we want to sit back and wait and not use this, this is where things are going. And generative AI funding in 2023, and this graphic is weeks old already, is already much more than 2022. Companies come out, a dozen new products come out every day. Some of them are just wrappers on ChatGPT, but others have their own AI tech. Venture capital has pivoted towards artificial intelligence. People are starting to integrate artificial intelligence from big companies down to little companies. It's a wave. I can't predict where it's going, just like I couldn't predict where the internet wave was going, and the e-commerce waves and things like that, or the cryptocurrency wave. Can't predict where they're going, but they did have astounding effects. And AI will have astounding effects, even if we it's kind of like, it's this difficult space where businesses risk being left behind if they don't take action, but the regulatory space is constantly moving, so keeping up is quite demanding. And we're going to see mass use cases coming out that people are already trying. Generating worlds and characters, as I've already mentioned. User-specific content, despite the importance of like rituals, such as watching, a shared TV show over time and talking about it and having some story elements. We're going to eventually have user-specific content in media, in entertainment, in other places as well. We're already seeing replacing of call centers, replacing of virtual assistants, and things like that. Auto coding, security. AI is actually very good in some implementations at finding holes in security setups, and which is scary. And I mean cybersecurity here. It should say that. And conversely, AI hopefully will be our best defense against cybersecurity threats as well. So the cybersecurity industry itself will need to use AI. It has, to some extent, already used AI. Antiviruses have used heuristic type artificial intelligence to detect malware for quite some time now. But at higher levels, we'll see cybersecurity really affected by artificial intelligence. Market testing, as I mentioned, I'm working on something right now that you can like A/B tests, or rapidly test some marketing copy or images and concepts across audiences, and not just test different market segments rapidly and iterate on them based on feedback, but also to perhaps detect new market segments that you might not think of, detect new commonalities, detect new potential target markets. And then probably scarily, assisted decision making. Now, this isn't an exhaustive list. It's just what I thought of or have read about. Assisted decision making is very much it's something that people are excited about, using AI to help give a full picture and avoid bias. As humans make decisions, to you could pitch a decision to an AI, and it would give you some considerations related to that decision, supporting or against it, or so on. And Palantir recently showed off an AI doing this in military context. I find this terrifying. A lot of people find this exciting, but it could send out drones. It had to have human approval, but in the test's experience, the human just said yes to everything. It could send out drones, do some reconnaissance, make some conclusions about the identity of objects that the drones detect, and then recommend action, some eagle eye level things. And because, where the money is, this is where things are going, unless there is significant action to stop it. So we're going to see assisted decision making of some kind, hopefully not as dystopian as that sounds. And if you think about it, there are already systems in place where artificial intelligences are calling all the shots and telling humans what to do. That's what Uber is. It's an artificial intelligence asking humans to do what it can't in order to accomplish its goals. Now, I'm oversimplifying there, and there are definitely still some elements in there where it's not purely that, but that's where we're heading. An artificial intelligence making recommendations, making decisions. We potentially risk humans coming to the point where they trust those decisions, where maybe mathematically they should trust those decisions, and the implications of that for society, I don't think can be undersold. It's just it's something that we need to think about deeply. So some of the popular risks of AI that are discussed include things like this. Macro risks I'll talk about quickly, then micro risks for people. First, the popular risk: make all the paper clips you can. If you tell an artificial intelligence to do this, will it then start melting down other things because this is its directive? Will it start, killing things, taking land, right? If you gave it power over manufacturing and told it to do this, would it on the side manufacture some weapon to kill people in order to increase its productivity in making paper clips? That's a legitimate question, right? So how do you safely implement artificial intelligence? Now, this has been refined since, but if you want to read more about it, it's the paperclip producer, or paperclip AI scenario. This is obviously it sounds doomsday. It's a very popular, whenever a doomsday scenario comes out, it spreads like wildfire. But it's unique in that a rather large percentage of people who are very smart about artificial intelligence have started voicing the dangers of it. Does that mean it's a real danger? I can't tell you, but it's a well-discussed danger by some of the top people in the field. Big Brother Skynet corporations, another well-discussed. This doesn't mean an independent corporation necessarily, like an AI that has no human input, but an AI that has some kind of absurd control. If Google or some corporation comes and pulls in all these people using it, and suddenly it's integrated with all the applications and all the hardware and all the systems and all the cars and all the computers and all the vacuums and all the the humans, calendars and things and emails, it has a huge amount of power. And maybe it's the humans who have a huge amount of power in that situation. Maybe it's just the system that has a huge amount of power. Also, self-perpetuating falsehoods. I think this one's bigger than a lot of people say. It's something that I've run into in the medical publishing industry, and another side life. And you have this situation even in popular writing where people come in and they, a user types a fact into Wikipedia. Maybe they misheard it. It doesn't matter, whatever. In this case, the scroll lock was designed by future Energy Secretary Stephen Chu. And they make up a fact. And then a writer who's rushing for some cheap publication writes about the fact, checking Wikipedia. And then suddenly readers check Wikipedia and it gets added as a citation on Wikipedia. And then it just cycles until you have 1,000 references and the world believes that this is the truth, So this kind of snowball effect that we often can see in certain kinds of professional journals too, with meta-analyses repeating, initially there was just some kind of bias that said that, well, green M&Ms are related to pimples because of bad statistics or because of some kickback. And it just cycles and cycles until it becomes common wisdom. And this is a problem if the AI that will run aspects of society is trained on data. It will really entrench those things, especially since there's no way to refine that data necessarily, barring some massive human project, which is unlikely to happen. There's no way to refine that data other than the AI refining it. So this is a real risk as well, as well as undetectable counterfeits. You've seen deep fakes around. There are political videos getting dropped. I'm sure that they're going to get dropped in this election cycle. You're going to see very convincing videos of politicians saying things, of people saying things, doing things that never happened. And the world has yet to come to some kind of agreement on how to corroborate, how to have true video evidence. There are ways to do it. There's proof of location, Bluetooth mesh, multiple angle, all these potential ways that we could do this. But they haven't been implemented yet. And so we're going to have a time where you don't know if facts are true, you don't know if writing was done by a human, and you don't know if videos are real or photos are real. Big criminal justice implications, big implications for social media and things, and some of the things that we hope to solve. But macro risks to be aware of. Of course, if you're interacting with people in a business and they're trying to use AI to increase their own productivity, you're probably not focused too much on the paperclip problem, or your own productivity, right? So there are risks for people as well as they use AI. One risk is trusting AI. I don't mean that it's actually an evil agent and you're trusting it and it's going to stab you in the back. I mean that GPT and things like that, they make up things. They predict, they hallucinate. And ultimately, you have to fact check it. You have to have someone go over it. It's going to sometimes make errors. So AI is very good for doing things like taking data and charting it out, finding outliers or finding trends. What you don't want it to do is like correct all the errors or make more data, like project the data out and make more data points and then act as though there's those real data. You don't want to give it too much power in your workflow. It can find outliers in your data. Very good. It's finally analog computing come back. It can find patterns. It can find trends. It can find trends you've never thought of. It runs on that entire premise where it's been able to fold proteins and beat people at Go and predict, you could ask it to make a matrix GIF and it does, right? It's very good at that, at finding trends and predicting the future and at finding outliers that violate those trends. You could do financial analyses. You can do sales, like workforce analysis. You can do competitor analysis and stock analysis and all sorts of things. And it will be very good at finding trends and finding outliers. But do not trust it to be a source of truth in any sense ever. Thankfully, AIs are starting to cite things, cite links, and then you can follow up on them, but you can't trust it. Also, uploading private data to an AI is a valid concern. And there are ways to not do this. And it doesn't mean you have to run your own in-house AI. In ChatGPT, if I come here and I come into settings, you could see there's a data control setting. This was actually instituted recently because in Italy, I'm going to try to find this, terrible news site, but in Italy, ChatGPT was banned for data privacy concerns. And then OpenAI made some updates and the Italian regulator was satisfied. And so it's allowed in Italy again. And so I can come into ChatGPT settings, go to data controls and turn off chat history and training. If you have chat history and training on, chats will be added to your history and will be used to improve ChatGPT with model training. That might not fit your business's privacy concerns or might not fit privacy policies or regulations, depending on a business's, whatever industry, whatever professional, organizations, jurisdictions they're in. So you can come in and turn off chat history, have a separate user where you turn off chat history, access the API in a way that disables chat history, and then OpenAI does not use that for training, and it's private material. Now, again, relatively private. Even then, you are transmitting information to OpenAI, but it's in a secure environment, and there are some, I don't know if I'd call them guarantees, but there are some privacy guarantees offered by OpenAI. Finally, violating copyright. Yeah, promises. That's the word I'm looking for.
We got about 10 minutes left, Peter. I want to make sure that we've got a little time for Q&A.
Sure. Oh, I thought that there was a half-hour Q&A afterwards.
Yeah. Well, I like about 10 minutes on air, and then we stop recording at the top of the hour, and then we get really crazy.
Yeah, we're almost done.
Awesome.
Violating copyright laws with AI. This is a problem. There's news today about this. I don't know if I'm going to find it here, but there was news today about it. That's early news right here. Europe takes aim at ChatGPT with might soon be the West's first AI law. Who knows if it's going to become law or not? But it's first of all, it's a broad base of banned AI applications that are banned by default. And also, some lawmakers have been calling for imposing requirements on foundation models. In other words, things like this general ChatGPT model with safety checks, including not violating copyright law. There have been lawsuits against, or at least there was a lawsuit attempted against Microsoft for its GitHub Copilot integration because it was potentially using code to learn from that was copyrighted. Now, does this fall under fair use? Maybe. I mean, I go to a musical concert, and I listen to some music that's going to affect music I write in the future, even if I'm not copying verbatim, even if I didn't record it. And the AI is learning by reading all these things. It doesn't keep data. It doesn't save quotes anywhere at all. It just learns how language is used. It learns how words relate. It learns how images and music and things code works and relates. So it's not actually copying things, but there is an open legal question here that's going to be a significant issue for a while. Is copyright law violated in these circumstances? There are some startups, some companies that are working on AI models that are guaranteed to not have copyrighted material among their training bases, but obviously their quality is much poorer because they have much less to work with and they have much lower quality material to work with. So it's an open discussion whether this will be fair use or not. Personal use does apply to many AI experiments currently. I mean, look, if it is determined that copyright law does affect the ChatGPT model, they're not coming after personal users, right? They're coming after ChatGPT. And hopefully the regulations will be transparent and not applied by enforcement before they're actually voiced. But personal use does apply to most AI experiments currently. I have this here as a legal consideration because you'll see companies coming out with new products that are wrappers around basically a leaked Facebook LLVM, a leaked Facebook model. Facebook accidentally leaked a huge model, like the model that underlies ChatGPT. And it, by licensing its users, companies, excuse me, this is a pretty recent addition, companies are restricted from using that. They haven't licensed it. So Facebook would come after companies. But personal use is not only unenforceable, but it's likely to be allowed. And so there are these models that people are coming in and downloading. Some of them are licensed and allowed to be used or open sourced or whatever. Some of them are not. And you could see these personal projects that seem like really cool applications, and it turns out they're actually built on a model that hasn't been licensed correctly. So you have to be aware of licensing concerns, especially when it comes to the Llama model that has been leaked by Meta, accidentally by Meta. So the Hugging Face site is another site you'll see, huggingface.co. This is where you can come and learn if you're more technically inclined. You can download models and data sets and different kinds of models and look at docs, and you can spin up, you can actually pay for some computing time. This isn't where I wanted to go, but you can pay for some computing time in order to train your own models, tune your own models. People are taking this and they are fine-tuning AIs and running them on Pixel phones, like not running on the internet, running on Pixel phones. They're fine-tuning AIs on their laptops in an evening. They're doing so much with this open source material and fine-tuning things like that, that Google internally concluded in yet another leaked document, we have no moat. Okay, that may be overstating it, but the open source community is rapidly developing. And in fact, they concluded that they're in this memo that they're doing things with $100 that we struggle to do at $10 million. So you'll see some applications coming out. They'll be exciting. They'll be fine-tuned, which means you fine-tune them to a very specific thing, like medical advice or financial analysis or something like that. They become very good at that thing, better than ChatGPT. And it was very cheap to fine-tune them. But you do need to be aware that there might be a licensing issue if there is if the base foundation model that was used before that fine-tuning was not licensed correctly. Second to last, liability. This is a huge question. It's like the driverless car question, where if I'm a driverless car, I'm the AI, and there are 3 people in the road and there's no way to avoid them. Do I turn into the wall and sacrifice the driver to save the 3 people's lives? What programming or intelligence determines that? If that happens, right, who's liable? And so if AI gives advice and it's followed, or it's somehow incorporated into a workflow where it's likely to be followed without question, or its advice is given a lot of weight, what are the liability concerns there? Finally, I've harped on this, I'm going to harp on it again. Products and laws, especially in Europe, but also elsewhere, are in constant development. 7 days from day, this presentation would be different. So be aware of that. But all those legal considerations aside, professionals who use AI can gain immense productivity advantages. Not only us as consultants, but people in the companies we work with. Certain fields just are falling behind if they're not using AI. That's just how it is, especially with programmers drafting, debugging code, creatives who are drafting or refining content, which soon includes 3D content. You can create some prototypes, see how things would look, and then go from there with your art. Analysts looking for trends or outliers in data, cleaning data. Administrators composing emails and schedules. There are already, in Gmail, there is now an AI assistant, or at least there will be soon. I think they're rolling out access, where you start an email and it suggests not just a simple autocomplete like the primitive AIs did, but it can suggest the entire email for your review. You don't have to type out the whole thing. Anyone who really ever uses a keyboard, these predictive models are going to come in and offer a solution that can at least outline, assist, and find errors and problems in things that you produce. So businesses who prohibit all AI use do risk falling behind, depending again on their industry. And their policies should consider training people to use AI responsibly, to use it in a way that understands the limitations, where people don't trust AI, they don't use it as like a final word. They understand there are hallucinations and biases and things like that. They understand that they need to comply with privacy regulations. And if it's a need for a very private artificial intelligence and a very specific application, the businesses can consider fine-tuning an AI to their specific data sets, their specific use cases, which is something that is now feasible. And it's so feasible that hobbyists are doing it at minimum cost. And that's, I guess, brings me to the final decision, I think, that business policymakers need to make. And it might not be business wide, it might be for specific applications. Do we use public AI services like ChatGPT that have acceptable privacy protections and privacy policies? We can have some plugins that fine-tune those and so on. So we do have limited fine-tuning ability, but we still are sending information out there. And if OpenAI has some kind of leak, or there's some other kind of leak, then we've lost our data's out there. It's a data breach as far as the company's concerned. Or do we fine-tune publicly available models? Do we fine-tune artificial intelligences in-house, which means we still need a little bit of in-house talent that's capable of doing this? Do we fine-tune those for private use? So depending on the application, the business may want to go one way or the other. And that's my summary. I know it's been all over the place. It's as broad a picture I can give of how to use AI personally, how to recommend other people use AI personally, the pitfalls they should watch out for, and the business policy implications that all those things have as small to medium bound businesses fight to compete in a market where AI is becoming more and more important.
Wow. And we should not be surprised at the breakneck speed, given the breakneck speed of the industry we're talking about. I'm going to record slightly longer than usual so we can get a couple of the typed in questions addressed. Mary Beth noted that the lighthouse example didn't include any of the 200 Great Lakes lighthouses. I checked to see how many lighthouses Mary Beth would have seen if it had been there. And apparently there's about 200 if you believe Google, and I don't believe anyone anymore. I'm not sure there's anything to be said other than to say, yay, Mary Beth. Eddie says, Peter, did you ever use ChatGPT in a real life scenario to do unit testing or a UAT of code or some analytics application?
So regarding that, yes, someone noted that, there are lighthouses on the American side in the Great Lakes. I guess they weren't in the data set
Where it said the coast and it decided coast didn't mean lakes somehow.
Right. He
Who
might
knows
have.
what it thought?
Exactly. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows? I mean, I can tell Canada's missing here on this side.
Right.
So right. Real life scenarios. I haven't done that yet, except, well, there's two cases I've done that. First is that I'm building a project that I'm scared will end the world. Please don't tell anyone about it because I'm no, but I've started giving an AI the ability to run command line commands on a server. I want to be able to tell it things like set up a Rust environment, or scaffold a project, and it runs the command line commands. And I've made some progress. I could tell it simple things like make a bunch of random folders and put private keys in all of them, and it will do that correctly. But I had to bend over backwards to do that. I've got a task AI. I've got a like watchdog AIs. It's like there's another AI that checks whether it was run correctly. See, the problem is like quantum computing and like analog computing, there are some actually interesting parallels here. You can't be sure that there's 100% right result. It's like a 90% likelihood you're going to get a good result or something like that. So you have to have redundancy or have to have that worked in your flow. We are looking at doing it for, we're actually, I'm involved in an account management service that does do some blockchain work. And we're looking at it for AI inspection of transactions so that if a transaction comes in and it's an outlier, like it's obviously draining the account or something that seems like it's not something the user would do, that it gets flagged and needs additional verification by the user. So that's the closest I've gotten. I haven't done AI in unit testing or CI/CD pipelines or anything like that yet. But Google Analytics does already use AI. I don't have enough experience in that to know what that entails.
I suspect we'll be revisiting this topic in a few months as the topic continues to churn.
Sure.
And Aon and David are both noting, fact checking by asking for sources, and some of the AIs, will give you a list of URLs of which 90% don't exist. And Dave was curious why the internet's not more often incorporated,
Sure.
which as of this afternoon, it is. I just got my plugins turned on in my ChatGPT Plus account. So, yeah.
Depending on where you are in the rollout, you can see, I don't even have it. You can see web browser or code interpreter mode here. Code interpreter was doing all those cool
I stopped your
lighthouse
screen
notebook
sharing,
things.
so whatever you're doing,
Oh.
they can't see. I
I'm
wanted to see
sorry.
each other's
Well,
faces.
That's okay. So you'll have drop downs of models 3.5, 4. You can drop that down, and if you have access, you could see web browser mode, or there are specific plugins that give you access to YouTube videos, things like that. You could definitely give it internet access now, and that definitely improves the quality of results. That will like
Fewer
check links
hallucinations
and so on.
probably, but I'm not sure that increases accuracy as much as we might hope, given that its source of data is the internet.
That's true, but at least the links you click will hopefully
right.
go
At least
somewhere.
the links will be valid. Yeah, right. At least you'll be able to spread the blame around more equitably. At this point, I need to pause and say thank you to Peter. We will continue an unrecorded Q&A for the next roughly 30 minutes. But I know that Chuck and I and the rest of the board want to say thank you, Peter, for your exhaustive preparation and breakneck delivery. I plan to rewatch the recording at half speed with pen and paper in hand to try to catch everything. And on that note, thank you all very much for attending. If anyone's watching the recording because they couldn't make it in, sorry for the technical issue. We had 111 registrants, and some of them sadly got caught in that and couldn't get in live. But we will make this recording available on YouTube shortly. And with that, I'm Thomas Cox, your host. We thank you for joining us at IMCnow. We'll be back in 1 month.